Hello and welcome to Print Books for Indie Authors Day. My name is Mark Leslie Lefebvre, and I am the Director of Business Development for Drafted Digital. But just like that president of the Hair Club for Men, well, I'm not the president, but I have been an author with Drafted Digital for many years, pretty much from the day that they launched more than 10 years ago, and also been a Smashwords author when they first launched, even earlier. And of course, actually, self-published, indie published my very first book more than 20 years ago. But this session in the day of print books for indie authors, this session is all about print books. And it's an introduction to print books. If you're just beginning, you're not sure about print books and how indie authors can get them, I'm going to do a bit of an overview. So I'm going to jump into it right away. I do want to pop up because it's always loved. If you have questions and stuff like that, the last 15 minutes, I'll be taking your questions live. I love the fact that I'm seeing folks from all over the place, which is just great. Hello to everyone. I love seeing your comments. I'm probably going to miss those comments because there's so many of you watching live, and I'm so appreciative that you're joining us. But welcome. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in. What I'll do is my very best to get to those at the very end. But what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to get into some slides that I've pre-prepared to give you a little bit of a walkthrough. And this is the first time I've ever done this presentation on StreamYard. So let's see if I can get it to work. Oh, look at that. It's working. I'm pretty excited now. All right. So this, again, is the introduction to print book. So again, probably the first 20 minutes or so, 30 minutes, I will be going through some of this. And this is sort of the overview. I'm going to do a very brief history of print books, how traditional publishing, book distribution works, so we can understand that. How print on demand works, print book industry stats, because this is important, because I think it's important for us to understand just how big and powerful print books are and how they can be for indie authors, and then how print or POD distribution works. And I'm going to specifically take you through a very high level of draft digital print, and then we can get into the live Q&A. So let me just get started on this. So in a nutshell, when you look at the history of publishing in general, is really about taking those oral stories that we used to share, around a campfire or in our local villages or wherever it was. And stories were always a part of human culture. But print books allowed us to take those stories where you actually had to have the storyteller live with an interactive audience, which is a very beautiful way to hear stories. And finally, we're able to put them onto paper. And the initial paper was not very widely distributed. And you're thinking about things like scrolls, and you had to have monks or whatever that knew how to write and could transcribe those stories. But the beauty of that, and this is sort of the beginning of print publishing and print books, was you could have someone transcribe those stories, and then that scroll could be sent to another village where somebody who had the ability to read could get access to the story and then read that to other people. But it was still very, very limited. It really wasn't until we had the invention of Gutenberg and the printing press and movable type where that kind of took the idea of being able to take those books and manufacture them at a very, very high level. Of course, again, just like scrolls were limited to people who basically had the privilege of people who could read and had access to these limited scrolls, the same thing was the initial print books were hardcover, so they're very, very expensive. And so, again, it was limited. Now, libraries did make that very accessible and continue to this day to make them very accessible. But it wasn't until the invention of other formats of print, like the mass market paperback, for example, and print pulp and magazines and things like that, that actually made books more affordable. And the great thing, every time you think about the transition of the history of publishing, is that every iteration of improvements in the print industry, it provided more opportunities for authors, which is why we are here today. So the next major step in print book distribution was, of course, online book selling. Obviously, started with Amazon.com, the very first major one, still around, but then so many thousands of other ways that you could order print books online. Now, a couple other things, and we're not going to really get into it today, but it's important to note that with that access, with more people having more access to print books, again, the opportunities for writers grew. The opportunities for publishing books in ebook format and digital publishing did create, again, more distribution, more access, more affordability. and then also allowed authors more options. And we're able to remove some of the gatekeepers of traditional publishing. But we're not really going to talk about ebooks, because here's the important thing. It's not really just about that next iteration. It's not about saying that the old things are no longer there just because we have new technology. It is really about a new way or new opportunities for authors. Because yes, ebooks allowed print to be books to be available in other formats and more accessible. So did audiobooks as well. But as Mitch Joel, Canadian digital marketing guru, says, everything is with rather than instead of. So we want to look at the way that, yes, ebooks are great. Indie authors love ebooks. There's so easy access to ebooks, but let's not forget the value and the importance of print. So let's get into that. Now, I want to start with traditional publishing and book distribution. This is a very high level. So in the traditional model, the author writes the book and sells it to a publisher, potentially through an agent or not. The publisher then, and this is important, you see this icon below the publisher icon, they have to print, offset printing, thousands of books in order to be able to afford the cost and distribution, so they can have lots of margin. But they have to pre-print thousands, tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of books, and pay to store them in a warehouse somewhere that the supply chain uses in order for bookstores, both physical and online bookstores, to get access to. And then what happens is the customers then purchase those books from the bookstores. But notice the little icons I use, the little book icon. So let's say the publisher publishes tens of thousands of books, and only a few thousand of those books, maybe, let's say each of those little icons represents about 1,000 books. Let's say bookstores order in about 3,000 of those books, and they get into the bookstores, and customers have the opportunity to buy them. But the traditional publishing industry is very much about the front list. And front list means books that were published within the last 6 months. So they're constantly iterating and putting out new titles. And the bookstores, except for some core titles that have been around and continue to sell year after year after year, it's usually about those new books. And so they want to bring in fresh books for their customers. But then in the traditional industry, it's a consignment-based industry. And what happens is, and this has happened since the Great Depression, 100 years ago, is the industry has the opportunity that if the book does not sell, the stores can return those to the publisher. And what you notice is maybe 3,000 go in and 2,000 get returned. Yeah, the stats of returns are pretty scary. And that's one of the great things that traditional publishers do, is they actually circumvent and they buffer that. They take all the risk in terms of that, which is why it's so hard. And it's such a curated process to get books in through traditional publishing, traditional book distribution. And that's kind of how that cycle operates over and over and over again. And of course, with whatever's left over, the author gets some money from that. So that's in a high level. That is traditional book distribution. Now, print on demand is a little bit different, because whereas with traditional printing, you have to print usually a minimum of 1,000 copies of a book in order to get the cost down low enough in order to absorb the costs. Because the other thing that happens in the industry is the warehouse takes a cut and the bookstore takes a cut, and there's really not a lot left over for the publisher and for the author. With print on demand, this is a system that's only been around maybe 25 years roughly, and it's really only become easily accessible to authors in maybe the past 12 years or so, maybe even 10 years or so. And this is where you take your digital file and then you use some sort of distribution platform, direct with retailers through a platform like Draft2Digital or other distributors. You make that product listing available, and the retailer lists that print book online. But nobody has printed a book yet, unless you've printed a sample copy and you want to see how it looks and get some proof copies, etc. But it's listed online without having to print tens of thousands of copies and put them in a warehouse. And then a customer shops online, makes their purchase. The book is printed on demand. There's hence the on demand and print on demand. The book is printed on demand, and then the book is delivered to the bookstore, the library, the customer, and then the author is paid the royalties, which is kind of the difference between all of the costs involved. And that's kind of print on demand in a nutshell. But I want to get into a few other things here in terms of print book stats, because a lot of indie authors are making really good money on the ebook industry. And the ebook industry is phenomenal. That's how both Smashwords and Draft to Digital got started. But there is still a much larger industry outside of ebooks. And I want to share some high level stats from various reports that I've tended to over the years. So, this is a report from Statista that goes back to 2003. And when you actually say, so you're looking at the US, which is one of the major markets, you can actually see ebooks and print book sales. In China, you can see actually ebook sales do outsell print books in China, but in the US, it's still looking like it's only about 70% of the overall industry. And then you see in Japan, even where digital is huge, they still have a much bigger print book. So Great Britain as well, and you'll notice throughout Europe and some other countries, print books are even more dominant than they are in the US. So there's this whole untapped market for indie authors related to print books because there's still millions and millions of readers who are reading print books. This is just sort of, and again, this is based on the Association of American Publishers. So it's independent publishers in the US. And by independent publishers, I don't mean indie authors. I mean actual traditional publishers who are very small operations who still do the pre-printing and the warehousing. And again, traditional publishers maybe are probably selling fewer ebooks than indie authors. If you look at indie authors, you should say, oh, 90% ebooks and 10% print, but it's the other way around. So you're seeing hardcovers and paperbacks and ebooks and digital audio. So this is going back just last August 2024. So you can kind of see that there's still a huge market for print books. And again, that's something that's untapped from us. This is from the Alliance of Independent Authors. It goes back to 2021. And again, it kind of illustrates the different genres. And if you are an indie author, I highly recommend becoming a member of the Alliance of Independent Authors. They are your champions. They're the ones doing all kinds of great work for you. Draft to Digital is proud to be a member of the Alliance of Independent Authors. As an indie author myself and traditionally published author, I'm proud to be a member. But again, taking a look at the stats in terms of print book sales and ebook sales, we can really see that print books are still a going thing. Now, I'm here in Canada, and I'm a huge fan of BookNet Canada. I used to be a member of their board. I always pay attention to their stats about reader surveys, and this is important: is how do people discover the books that they want to read or buy? So this goes back a couple years, but again, it's word of mouth. It's browsing in online retailers. It's browsing in physical bookstores and libraries, and so this gives you an idea where print books are actually walking and not talking. Well, they are talking really, because books talk to me. I can't walk by a bookstore without them saying, Mark, come on in, you got to check us out. But they are. This is the way that people discover books. And so it's a really important aspect. But if you don't have print books, it's another method of discoverability that can't be out there. Another great thing about print books is if I'm reading, I'm here in Canada and I read on Kobo and I read ebooks, people can't see the book I'm reading on my Kobo, but when I'm holding a physical copy of a book by indie author Thorne Coyle and their book here, Resistance Matters, if I'm reading this, you can actually see the cover and it's a walking advertisement. I can also do this magical thing that's difficult to do with ebooks, and I can say, here you go. You can borrow this from me, or you can see it, or you see it sitting on my coffee table. And that's just outright marketing right there. The average Canadian book buyer, when we look at it again from a BookNet Canada stat from a couple years ago, you're kind of getting an impression of the percentage of what they're buying. Now let's look at that. 54% paperback and 25% hardcover. Again, my old eyes maybe aren't seeing those numbers so well, so if I'm reading it wrong, that's between 70 and 80% in the average Canadian book buyer is reading print books, and ebooks are still a relatively small percentage. Ebooks are going to continue to grow, but I don't think print books are going anywhere anytime soon. This is some borrowing stats on how people borrow books from libraries, which again are a very important way for people to discover books. And you can kind of see print books is still way up there. Audiobooks has been growing significantly in the past several years, and ebooks is still growing. Now, again, another stat. This one is from a study done by Portland State University about libraries, and again, talking about just the way that people discover books. And again, having books available to libraries so important. This is just another factor for purchasing the book. Yes, the genre is there, so you're browsing in a category of something you like, but you're actually looking at some of the other decisions that they make. So reviews are always really important. The book cover, all of these different things are important aspects. But there is nothing like walking into a library or a bookstore and finding one of your books on the shelf. And that's one of the reasons Draft to Digital is doing this full day of print books and wanting to help you with different experts and talking about different aspects of the industry. This is a shot from it's St. Pete Beach. Sarah and I were both at Novelist Inc. in Florida a few years ago and went to Haslam's, one of the oldest independent bookstores in the United States. And lo and behold, found one of my traditionally published books and one of her self-published books on the shelves. And this is an important thing, as I asked the manager, well, hey, why do you have this? Well, they had my Tomes of Terror there because I wrote about Haslam's and a ghost that allegedly haunts, that Jack Kerouac allegedly haunts Haslam. So there's a chapter about Haslam's in my book. And the reason they had Sarah's independent published titles that were available through print on demand is Sarah had books that were traditionally published and consumers who came in and said, we love this author. Can you please order these books in? And they were constantly selling and getting requests for them. So the manager just decided, okay, there's enough demand. Let's just carry her books as well. So that can happen. Now, this is important. Being self-published does not mean you can't get into bookstores or libraries. Having a publisher may make getting your books into bookstores and libraries easier. But in either case, and this is so important for us to remember, it's still a relationship and it's something that you have to curate and you have to nurture. It's not easy. It's not as easy as actually, I know it sounds, easy as publishing. It's actually harder than publishing, but it's all about relationships. Now, I want to get into some of the details and some of the specifics here. So online listings, that's relatively easy for all of us to do. So physical stores are not likely to carry print on demand or non-returnable. That doesn't mean they won't. When you can think outside the box, there are different ways you can work with them to do this. I've even negotiated with some local bookstores and said, hey, if you can bring in my books and you don't end up selling them since they can't return them, I'll buy them off of you. Could you give me your staff discount as well? So they're not stuck with the stock and they still make a little bit of margin. But ideally, what I want to do is drive people into the store to buy the book by advertising, hey, if you want signed copies, you can go to here in Waterloo, Ontario. You can go to Wordsworth Books. And I was just in there the other day and I've signed all the copies of my books that are there. So go pick them up from Wordsworth. And here in Canada on April 26th is Independent Bookstore Day. And a lot of authors are encouraging, hey, go to your local bookstore and pick up books. Now, the other way that authors can use if they're print on demand or self-published books is you make author copies for yourself. And I'll talk about how you can get those. And then you have a direct relationship with the store where you bring them in and then they pay you. For example, I just last week got a check from Indigo, which is a chain bookstore here. And the Cambridge Indigos carries a good number of my traditionally published and self-published books. And I got, I guess, my annual check from Indigo for some of the books that they had in stock. So it is possible with a little bit of work. Now, the key thing that I want to remind you, we are going to be talking about marketing print books, and that's the session at the end of the day today. And that is going to be with Johnny B. Truitt. It's going to be with Katie Cross. It's going to be with Lydia Shearer. And it's going to be with Todd Fonstock. Now, these are 4 individuals who are independently published authors who are doing some really cool things with print books. So we'll be talking all about marketing then in more detail. But the thing I say is don't ask what your local library or bookstore can do for you. Ask what you and your books can do for the local library or bookstore. This is just some examples of online listings, right? So with print on demand titles, you actually see Haunted Hospitals on the right. That's trad published. Those other titles, those are either published through Ingram Spark or Draft to Digital Print, and they are available on Amazon. You can see similar listings over on Barnes & Noble. Again, traditionally published book Tomes of Terror. All the rest of those books are all either through Draft to Digital Print or through Ingram Spark. And again, you can see this over at Indigo here in Canada. You can see the traditionally published books alongside the independently published books. Bookshop.org as well. You can see a whole bunch of my books available through there. And they're a phenomenal place if you want to support independent bookstores in the United States because they earn money off of that. But let's get into the high level levels for how you can get them. Now, Amazon's the world's biggest bookstore. Most people know about it. And they have a free option called KDP Print. And it's great. It's a phenomenal platform. And it's really, really great for getting your books directly listed on Amazon. I don't think it's that good at all for distribution. Now, they have a thing called extended distribution, and I jokingly, cheekily call it pretended distribution. And the reason I do that is because when Amazon, it's all about nepotism. Amazon wants to support Amazon and wants you to buy your books from Amazon. When they do extended distribution, they end up funneling it through a print on demand through Ingram. And it is available to bookstores and libraries, but at a significantly reduced discount. Well, 5% discount to the bookstores and libraries. And bookstores and libraries are looking for a 40% or 50% discount. So it's not very attractive to them, which is why I called it extended. So KDP print is great for Amazon, but not great for anyone else. When you're looking to go anywhere else, the main platforms you can probably use would be Ingram Spark, which again is a function of, it's a division of Ingram, and Ingram Lightning Source is the world's largest print-on-demand printer. You can use Draft to Digital Print. You can use Barnes & Noble Press. You can use Publish Drive. There are some other ones out there. Those are the bigger ones there. But of those four options, only use one, because whether you use Ingram Spark or D2D Print or B&N Press or Publish Drive, your books are all going to be using Ingram Lightning Source Print on Demand. So, and they can't handle duplicates. So it'll cause errors and things like that. So pick one. And hey, I work for Draft to Digital, but all I'm saying here, because we're here to help you with print books, is just pick one and go with it. Now, of course, I'm going to get into Draft to Digital Print just to give you an idea of how it works. But again, those are for distribution. And there are other options, other great options out there. Lulu's been around for a long time, even founded by a Canadian from Hamilton, Ontario. Book Vault from the UK has some really beautiful custom editions. We'll probably be showing you some of those at the session at the end of the day on marketing. And even local printers here in Kitchener-Waterloo, I use M&T Printing, and they're a family-owned business, and I do a lot of my local printing with them because it also saves me the cost of shipping from across the border. So those are the high-level options. Now, this is just a high level. When you look at D2D, when you go, this is sort of setting up your ebook. So you go to add a book, and I'm just going to go through this very briefly. You enter your metadata. You can double-check your table of contents, make sure it looks good. You can use one of our free templates. We'll be talking more about that in the D2D print session. Then you pick your pricing and how you want it to go. And then you finish and say, okay, I want to distribute to these platforms, but not these other platforms. And then the libraries, these are the library platforms I want to distribute to. And then you can say, okay, here's where I'm going to make my print book. And we'll get into that in a lot more detail in the next session where Jim Azevedo is going to be joining me. And we'll be talking about that. And this is where you go through and you pick your interior book templates and you can customize the way it looks. There's even cool templates for poetry, which is very different, very unique from regular print books, because sometimes you want to force and control where the books are justified, etc. And then you can get access to making a print cover right there. You don't even need a full cover wrap. And we'll talk again about that later on. But I wanted to get through that because I wanted to get to the questions. I see there's tons of comments. I want to get to your questions, so I'm going to remove this from the stage, and I'm going to try to scroll back and take a look at some of your awesome questions. So first, Guillaume says, I know that D2D Print also distributes to Waterstones. And that's a great comment, Guillaume. And yeah, so basically D2D Print ends up getting the books distributed through Ingram, which is the world's largest wholesaler for English language books, which means pretty much almost any online bookstore is going to have access to them. And bookstores can even order them in. They're very likely not to carry them unless you have a special relationship with the store, but they can special order them in for their customers. Now, I'm going to scroll way back. So many amazing questions. I love the interactivity here, but let me go. Brenda of early question, have you changed where books are printed? So Brenda, right now, Draft to Digital print books are printed through US and the UK and Australia and a few countries in Europe. They are not yet printed anywhere in Canada. So if you're in Canada like myself, I'm going to get them printed usually from Tennessee, from warehouse in Tennessee, and they're going to get shipped to me. And so that's currently how that works right now. Should copyright, this is a question from Mr. Perfect, should copyright be done before submission? And that is a personal choice for authors. I know that and anything I write down is immediately copywritten, but again, it's proof. Can I prove against the Penguin Random House lawyers, the expensive lawyers that I actually wrote this before this other book came out there. So it's different for different countries. I know in the US it's like $100 and you can register your copyright. The challenge with a lot of indie authors like me is, if I'm publishing numerous books a year, I may not, that extra expense is something, and the time that it takes to register copyright. But that's more of a personal question in general. Just folks saying hi from other places like Atlanta, Georgia, etc. I'm hoping this will be a class. So Matt says, hoping this will be a class on how D2D will now be offering print and how to. Yeah, well, we have been offering print for a few years now, Matt, and we're continuing to grow. And yeah, there will be a session. The next session, we get more into specifics about how to do those things. So you may want to check it out coming up at 1 o'clock Eastern in just roughly half an hour. And then we have Arizona and Illinois, and greetings from north of England. This is good timing because I'm about to launch a series of books. Hey, congratulations, Nigel. That's very exciting. And is this California or Canada, Timothy? I'm going to pretend you're Canada and say, hey, Canuck, hey, fellow Canuck. So, all right, so let's go through and see what other questions have popped up. Okay, so Tom, this is a great question. We need, there must have been another question before that I missed. Says we need color inside large print and hardcovers. I don't understand why we don't mimic all the features that Ingram Spark offers. So here's the thing, Tom, and we'll get into this in the next session, is we don't just make it available. We make it available with templates and machine perfect files that actually take our development team a significant amount of time to perfect. So what we will be doing next in order is we started with black and white interior trade paperbacks, and we limited it to about 6 trim sizes. Again, there is a challenge with authors who have never done print books before, and they can be overwhelmed, significantly overwhelmed if we throw all 35 options available right away. We want to limit that as much as possible to make it as easy as possible. But we also have to create templates for every single size. We are going to be, later this year in 2025, the very highest priority is going to be making large prints available because it's an underserved market. We know this is an underserved market, especially for indie author books. We know print is huge, and we want to be able to help empower indie authors with large print. Hardcovers will be next. And then after that, we'll probably look at color. But what I do recommend is if you have preferences, please email support@draftdigital.com, and please ask for these things, because we only know, not by asking here now, because it's just hearsay. If I go back to the Draft Digital team and say, hey, you know what, Tom says he wants this. When Tom emails support@draftdigital.com, that creates a ticket, a trackable ticket. And that is how we can prioritize, because then they can take all of those trackable tickets rather than just, Mark said 6 authors asked him this weekend about this. And that's really important, whether it's Draft to Digital or any other service provider. Those emails are very, very valuable, very important. All right. So, and great question, Cheryl. Are these Canadian stats similar to the US stats? Very similar. The Canadian market and the US market are very similar. It's just scale, right? We have a much, much smaller population here in Canada, but they're not all that different when you compare the stats. There may be some variances in different markets, but you can kind of say if people in Canada are purchasing a certain way, people in the US are purchasing in a very other similar way. And then Nigel says, this is good to hear, probably talking about some of the stats, because if you listen to the usual sources, all the focus is on ebooks, but paperbacks are still a big thing. So I'm glad you got that information, Nigel, and that's one of the reasons why we wanted to do a day like this. So that's really exciting. All right, so let's see what other D2D print distributes the Waterstone. Sorry, you guys are so many great comments. I'm trying to keep my eye on these things. My biggest challenge is I have a nonfiction book that's 300 pages in full color. So S. McQueen, you can go to Ingram Spark is probably the best way to get that book available full color. Now, the thing is, when you go to full color, it's really expensive. So you're going to have to set your price pretty high. You can also do that with some local printers as well for copies that you want locally. But that is that's also a challenge for sure. And I'm pretty sure color's not going to be coming to Draft to Digital print right away. But again, email support@draftdigital.com and let them know. Let us know. Um, also has a children's books that are in color. Yeah, it is. It's challenging to get good color in print on demand, but I have seen color from Ingram, and they're actually pretty decent as well as some of those other publishers out there. Okay, so let me see. So let's see. Robin said, I recently published 3 paperbacks via D2D. Only one is showing up on US stores with a regular price, but all 3 are showing up on Amazon Canada for $42.44. Did I do something wrong? We can get into that in the next session, Robin, but you can set a Canadian price through Draft to Digital Print as well. And I would, again, I don't have access right now because I'm doing a live chat. I would email support@draftdigital.com and say, okay, here's this ISBN. I published it on this day. I'm seeing it here. I'm not seeing it here. What's going on? And then we can work with our print distribution partner to check through Ingram and to see what's going on and what metadata is being sent. And that could be why. But again, the exchange rate's pretty scary right now in terms of the Canadian dollar. So that may be why you're seeing that. There's also a weirdness that Amazon does that nobody can control, because Amazon does what Amazon does, and we just kind of have to take it. But they can kind of let any third-party vendor take that feed through, like Ingram's print-on-demand feed, and reset the price and sell it for whatever. And that's a really horrible system where the people with lots of money can do whatever they want, and we can't really control that, unfortunately. Which is why I'm a big fan of publishing wide and making your book available elsewhere, so they can go check it out on Barnes and Noble or Waterstones or Chapters Indigo or bookshop.org, support independent bookstores. Question I think came up from Becca. Becca says, will there be colored interiors and be able to do the flank pages at the beginning? So the end pages, Becca, right now is not a thing. Again, email support. I know you can get end pages from some of the other printers, like Book Vault is one of the examples. I've seen some gorgeous, but right now that is not a thing, but it could be a thing later on. I'm positive that our print partner could do it, but again, we would have to create custom templates to make it as foolproof and easy for everyone. And Brenda says, like the printing, I love the size, just received an order, so that's fantastic. And Cheryl says, what's the difference between distribution from Ingram and Simon & Schuster? So Cheryl, that's a great question. I'm not sure if you just asked that about half an hour into this. Traditional distribution with Simon & Schuster, they usually print tens of thousands of books. They distribute to bookstores, they're returnable, etc. There's sales reps, there's all this extra 100-year-old industry that actually is behind that. With Ingram, print on demand. Now, Ingram is a wholesaler in general, so they also carry traditionally published books that they warehouse, but they also have print on demand, and that's what Draft Digital Print and other print on demand partners use. Those are typically non-returnable, so they're usually only for special orders, etc. Now, the margins are always also smaller on print on demand because the cost per unit is higher. Because you're not, you print 10,000 copies and the costs are lower. With print on demand, the cost stays the same, whether you do 1 or 1,000 copies. So those are some of the other differences as well. Is it standard practice in most countries that each format of book need its own ISBN? Yeah, actually, it is the international standard practice that every single different format of a book, ebook, hardcover, trade paperback, mass market, and audio, and audio could be audio read by the author, audio with a single narrator, audio duet narration, full cast, etc. Each of those are different formats that require an international standard book number, which are the universal English language ways that people can find books. Now, Amazon doesn't require them. They use their own Amazon inventory number, ASN, a standard book number or whatever. And those are because they're only selling on Amazon, and so they don't really care about those. Yeah, so special and sprayed edges, Julie, those are things you can get from specialty local publishers potentially, as well as I know Book Vault, and I think Lulu might even be offering them now. But that is not something currently available through Drafted Digital Print, and I'm not even sure. I don't think Ingram Spark provides that yet, but they probably are going to be looking at that. Are cleanup editing services available? So that means for your manuscript. So Kelly, we do not do that sort of work. We do have partnerships with companies like Readsy where you can find freelance editors to work with, etc. And I'll also be later today talking with some designers, book cover designers as well as talking to Vellum and Atticus in different sessions about, formatting and other tools if you don't want to use the free ones from Draft to Digital. So let me see. Color, color inside is what everyone wants. So Tom, you and everyone you talk to, tell them to email support@draftdigital.com and say, because if they get 1,000 emails that say print is color interiors are really important, guess what they're going to prioritize? Yeah, color interiors as well. All right, so let's see. Can you expand on building relationships? So this is from Taylor. Relationships with libraries and bookstores. Would you recommend visiting in person, dropping off free flyers, books? Taylor, this is a lot of work, and I've been doing this for 40 years. It's a lot of work, but I was a bookseller for 20 years. And so when I had a personal relationship with an author, I'd be more likely to carry their book, more likely to hand sell and recommend their book. But that's usually only if the author is a nice person or a decent person or a kind person, not if they were mean and cruel and they were a jerk when they came into the store. So I'd also say, yeah, it's really worth talking to your, going in and talking to the bookstores and libraries. We'll probably can talk a little bit more about that in the marketing session at the end of the day. But yeah, I'm not going to be able to get into it right now because this is just high-level print book stuff, because each of these sessions is meant to be dedicated. Will there be more typographical controls is the question from Tom. Centering a quote by itself on a single page. Tom, that's a great question. It just depends on the way you formatted the Word document. So if you're having trouble with that, I do recommend email support@drafttodigital.com. Maybe we can help you with making sure that those are centered, etc. The same sort of thing with Atticus and Vellum for the interior formatting as well. So let me see here. And Robin says getting books to show up at Indigo is completely random. Robin, I do have something. I know it's on my website, markleslie.ca. I think it's /libraries bookstores. Ping me and I can send that link to you. But you do have to contact Indigo because they'll only add a book. The buyers there will only add it to the website from Ingram's feed when you actually request that. You can potentially go to your local bookstore manager, Cole's Chapters Indigo, and ask them who to contact, and they can take care of that. I think master data at chaptersindigo.ca might be the email address, but I don't have it off the top of my head. So let me see here. Is there some place we can find a list of all these other places she's spoken about? That's a great question. So Becca, you know what? The best place to find out all the different service providers that have been curated and are not the crooks and scammers, because there's lots of crooks and scammers out there trying to just take your money, is the Alliance of Independent Authors, ALLI. Go check out the Alliance, Google them, check them out. That's probably the most comprehensive place to find all of the places that have been curated and trustworthy. So it will include Draft to Digital and Ingram Spark and Publish Drive and Lulu and Book Vault and a whole bunch of other places. More than that, Becca, but that'll at least get you started with that. The benefit of going through Draft to Digital as opposed to Ingram. So here's the thing. Ingram Spark is a pretty comprehensive and super system. It can be a little bit complicated. So if you're a beginner, you may want to take advantage of the free ISBNs and the free setup and the free cover wrap and the things that we do at Draft to Digital Print. If you're a more advanced user and author and you want to play with the other formats and all the different trim sizes and options, Ingram may be a better option for you. So again, I'm not going to try to say you have to use this system over that system. Just use one, and you can publish one book through Ingram and one through Draft Digital, another one through Publish Drive, different books, different ways. So you can try them out and see which system works best for you. I'm not going to talk about audiobooks yet because this is all about print books and I've only got 5 minutes left. And I want to make sure I get to your questions. And I do appreciate the engagement from you guys. You guys are amazing. All right. Okay. So Tom has some more questions and suggestions. Thank you for sharing them with me, but my word means virtually nothing. Please email those requests to support@drafttodigital.com. I promise you the people who are much smarter than me will get a hold of those and will be able to talk to other really smart people in the company. I'll probably forget that you asked this. I guarantee you I will forget you asked that question in about 5 minutes because today is a 7-hour nonstop day of sessions for me. Is there a charge? This is a great question, Thomas, for revising D2D print editions. Yes, we get charged by our manufacturer, our print partner, $25 every time we make a change to a locked-in print file. So if you haven't actually hit published and submitted it, so what we do, because if you went in and made 1,000 changes today, that would be 1,000 times $25 we would have to pay. We can't afford to do that. We can afford to do it for free, but not in any exorbitant way. So what we do is once a quarter, once every 3 months, we will put a change token in there that we pay for, and we put the change token in there. So if you need to make a print change, we'll cover the cost 4 times a year for any single book that you do. But if you desperately need to make another change because you've already used the free change token, well, that's going to have to cost you, and you can get it for $25. But that helps limit it so that we don't go bankrupt with one author who just wants to make a bazillion changes over and over and over again. All right, so large prints, yes. Yeah, you've been offering that already, so that's fantastic. Congratulations, Tom. And again, later today, I'll be talking to Vellum and Atticus. They'll be in a panel discussion and showing you how you can manufacture your interiors and stuff for print books through them. And so Tom Rowe wants to get Spiral Workbook. Those are hard. You can get them through Lulu. It's really, really hard because a lot of the vendors don't offer anything outside of that regular print on demand. So that may be something you go with Lulu or a local printer to get a hold of. So let me see. And okay, I think, no, I'm still not done with the questions. So D2D, Oklahoma based. That's right, in the same town that you live in. So hello. Lots of folks are still, I'm not in Oklahoma City, but I am close. And yeah, so that's towards the end of the session. So I've only got 3 minutes left. I want to thank you guys so much for your amazing questions, your enthusiasm, and please, if you do have any requests for Drafted Digital in terms of things you're looking for print books or other things, other services, we basically prioritize the things that authors are asking for. Some of the features we have, like payment splitting and even the poetry templates, for example. We didn't have poetry templates until we had a whole bunch of authors email and say, well, it's too bad because when I load my poem, your system messes it up. Could you please have a template that makes it more poetry friendly? So please do that. And Nico just asked this question: is a digital book free to publish? Nico, it is 100% free to publish books on Drafted Digital ebooks and even print books as well. And what happens is we just keep a small sliver. This is how we work as a distributor. We don't charge you anything up front. We keep roughly 10% of your ebook margin and something equivalent to that for the print books as well. That's how Drafted Digital makes its money. So when you sell a book, we take a small sliver of that, and that's how we make our money. That's how we can afford to keep hiring developers and customer service reps to do all those really, really cool things. But today is an amazing long day. It's a full day of print books for indie authors. And I'm so excited. In just about 15 minutes, because we're pretty close to the end of this, in just about 15 minutes, Jim Azevedo, who is the Director of Public Relations and Marketing here, he's going to be joining me, and we are going to be talking all about specifically a detailed overview of D2D print. There's going to be some pre-recorded videos, short videos, 5 minutes, etc., that kind of show you the walkthrough of how D2D print works. So I'm pretty excited about that. And then the whole rest of the day, I'm going to be interviewing different folks. We're going to be talking to book cover designers, Vellum and Atticus. We're going to be talking to authors specifically about marketing their print books. And I think I've forgotten one. And at the very, very end of the day, between 6 p.m. Eastern and 6:45 Eastern, is an open Q&A in the hopes that we can answer questions we didn't get a chance to get to earlier in the day. And great question. Will this be available for replay, Tom asks. And yes. So all of these videos you can find if you go to YouTube and look at the Drafted Digital channel, Drafted Digital, or youtube.com/Drafted Digital. All of our live videos, including all of the ones from today, will be there. Tom, there's no schedule. Oh, is there a schedule somewhere? Yeah, okay, so let me just pop this up here. It is d2d.tips and print day. Oh, I already put that up here. I'm just going to show this d2d.tips/print day, and you can see the schedule, more details, and then a link to each of the videos. Thank you for asking that question. That is fantastic. I'm glad you asked that question. And yeah, it is it is the end of the session. I want to thank you guys so much. Really appreciate your enthusiasm. And again, if you're hanging out for the day, I'll see you in about 15 minutes with Jim Azevedo, and we of course will be doing the very final or the more detailed look at specifically draft to digital print. So let me find that outro, and I'm going to I'm going to play the outro and the stream, and I'll talk to you guys soon.